Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of Joe's Knows College Sports. I'm your host, Giacomo Pielli, joined by Ben Chadwick and Matt Friedman tonight. We got a nice little bridge episode leading up to one of the biggest weekends in college football, obviously at the end of every year. So we got a couple action-packed segments already for this episode. So I think the first one we want to get into is a transfer portal news. Coach Primetime going to Colorado, guys. How are we feeling about this movement?
Yeah, so I'll start. I think this is so fun. I mean, let's say teams that are kind of up in the air about coaching. Like let's say Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan. I don't think they're the place for Coach Prime. I think it's a hit or miss guy. Like it's such a risk to get him. But with how bad Colorado was last year, like why not? It's such a fun pick. He's bringing in so much talent. That's another thing I want to get to. Some of the quotes that he already has are the funniest things I've ever seen. I mean, he walked into the Colorado locker room in front of the entire team who's returning for the season, and they gave him a round of applause. They're like, "Oh, we got Coach Prime as our coach. This is so cool." And he just goes, "Yeah, I got to get it right." He says, first of all, he tells them, "You all should enter the transfer portal because you sucked last year." And then he said, "I bring my baggage with me, and it's Louis." I mean, like that's incredible. He's talking about like, "Hey, I'm bringing in 5 stars. You guys suck. So why don't you enter the transfer portal so I have more room for my guys because I don't want you here." It was just incredible.
Yeah, he definitely changes the culture. And that's why, so my belief is with Coach Prime, I mean, he did a fantastic job with Jackson State, but I think that he could really only land at a school like Colorado where it's a step up from Jackson State. It's in the higher level, of Division I football where they're in a Power 5 conference, but it's a bit of a clean slate. Like it's just Coach Prime kind of gets to freestyle with this program because they've been so poor in recent years that he can kind of do what he wants right now for the next couple of years and see where he takes this program. And I mean, you already see he's flipping recruits left and right. 5-star wide receiver Sammy Watkins, his little cousin Winston Watkins. He already committed to Colorado, and I mean, there's been hundreds of recruits from schools all across the country that are entering the transfer portal who want to go play for Coach Prime in Colorado. So I think that Colorado, although they've been a poor program in recent years, I think that's what makes it so perfect for Coach Prime because he's able to freestyle a little bit and use his flair to bring in players via transfer portal.
Yeah, and Freeman, I mean, he's bringing in his son at quarterback too. Shedeur Sanders is going to be quarterback. It was a little weird to me how we didn't even like mention the QB battle would even happen. He just straight up said like, "Hey, this is your quarterback right here" in that press conference, which was just hilarious to me. No, but I mean, the NIL money is rolling in for Colorado right now. I mean, they are getting so many boosters, and it's legal now. So like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
They're rolling in boosters. There's like hundreds of 4- and 5-star recruits and guys who were 4- and 5-stars on current teams in the transfer portal that have already reached out to Coach Prime. Coach Prime didn't reach out to these guys. These guys reached out to Coach Prime to try and play at Colorado for football. Colorado is not the place. 3 years ago, if Colorado was where all these 4- and 5-stars were trying to go, I would have called you crazy. Coach Prime is there. It's all happening. It's just insane to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where this is my personal belief with this whole situation. I don't understand the decision by Coach Prime. I understand it's his son, but there are some big time quarterbacks out there in the transfer portal right now that I would assume Prime has a good chance of getting to go to Colorado and quarterback this team for the next year or so. You look at Spencer Sanders at Oklahoma State. He was an early Heisman candidate in the early stages of this year. I mean, you look at DJ Uiagalelei. He was a former 5-star recruit, and obviously he has struggled with Clemson, but you know that the talent is there and the physicality is there. You'd like to think that he would be open to some of these opportunities, but it seems like he's set on his son to come in and quarterback the Buffaloes here.
You got anything else to add, guys? Or are we all good there?
I'm so hyped for Colorado football, which I never thought I would say.
I want to add one more thing here. I think there's some advocates of Jackson State that are very disappointed with the way Coach Prime left. I think that if you are a fan of Jackson State or if you follow their college football program, what he has done for their program is unbelievable. I mean, he donated half of his paycheck. He cut it in half and donated the rest to the football programs. They had more funding. I mean, he's put this program on the absolute map. He flipped Travis on the number one recruit in the country last year to go to Jackson State with him. I mean, the amount of publicity and money that he's brought into this program, it's going to have a lasting effect on this school, on this program of Jackson State. So although he kind of left abruptly, he definitely did rejuvenate this football program at Jackson State.
Yeah, and Freed, there were some non-Power 5 schools that reached out to Deion when he was looking at where he wanted to start coaching in college. And I think the fact that he even thought about and went to an HBCU, he went to Jackson State, I think that just says wonders about his personality. He is so eccentric. People call him crazy sometimes. He's a great dude. And for him to go to an HBCU and do what he did there, he brought in the number one recruit. I mean, like you said, he put Jackson State on the map. People are going to be talking about them for a long time, and that is only because of Deion Sanders. So I think even the fact that he left after a couple of years, I mean, you just have to be thankful. It's kind of like LeBron going to the Heat and then leaving. Like he just wanted rings. Like, let him go back to the Cavs. Like, just let Deion do what he needs to do. He gave you all he has. So, like, you can only be thankful for him.
Absolutely. And just the one last thing, I cannot wait for, however long this whole Deion experiment lasts, whether it's out in a couple of years, whether he's a coach in college football for the next 10, 20 years. I mean, who knows? But this ESPN 30 for 30 that they're going to be cooking up is going to be the best thing I've ever seen. So I just cannot wait to see behind the scenes to this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, Jock. I know we keep going back and forth on you.
You're good. Go ahead.
One more thing out there. Just what Deion is doing for player coaches as well. I mean, because if you talk to players who are thinking about coaching, they don't want to run up the coaching tree. They don't want to be a quarterback coach to an OC to a head coach, which takes like 15 plus years. Like, they were players. They were star players. They want to be in that leadership role. Deion went to that leadership role. Even in the NFL, Jeff Saturday was hired out of nowhere, and he's that leadership role on the Colts. So I think what Deion is doing for players who are thinking about getting into coaching but have maybe been a little bit hesitant, what Deion's doing now is proving to them that, hey, these teams are going to be willing to bring in a guy like you who is great at the sport because they think that's what they need at that coaching position, because Deion has had a lot of success, especially in the recruiting process.
Absolutely. I mean, and sorry, Jack, I just got to jump in really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
You look at Primetime. His nickname is literally Primetime. This has to be one of the best recruiters that we've ever seen. And I understand it's very early, but to recruit top-tier guys, 4 stars, 5 stars, to an HBCU with a very poor football program, that's unbelievable. And I understand Colorado doesn't have the pedigree of an Alabama, of an Ohio State, of a Georgia. The way that he is going to be able to recruit, and he's already proven it in his first week, not even as head coach, it's really going to be something special. I cannot wait to watch it in the next couple of years.
That's the same here.
Yeah, definitely a lot of hype going into that movement from Coach Primetime. I think we're going to move it on into the next segment we have here for you guys today. We have our college football rankings recap so far. So, Matt, I think we're going to let you go first. Ben started last time.
Yeah, so, I mean, those of you who watch the show, I mean, this top 4, I'm absolutely loving it as a Buckeye fan. We slid in, rightfully so, I believe. I think if you're looking at objectively who the best 4 teams in the country are, these are the top 4. I think you could make an argument for Ohio State being where TCU is, having them flip-flop, but just you have to look and see. It's hard to sell an Ohio – or actually, it's easy to sell, but it's hard to create another Ohio State-Michigan matchup when they can easily just flip TCU and Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's last game was against Michigan, so it's clear that the committee wanted to avoid that in the first round. But, I mean, are you kidding me? Just hang on really quick. If Ohio State upsets Georgia and Michigan takes care of business against TCU, that might be the game of a lifetime. We're talking the national championship in the most heated rivalry in all college football. That would be unbelievable. But I think both teams have a long way to go. Georgia and TCU both have had great years. So, I mean, we'll see how it pans out.
No, and I was saying an episode or two ago that I do not envy the position that the college football playoff committee is in, just because of the sheer facts of how crazy this season was. There were so many teams that had playoff hopes just a few weeks ago, and it got narrowed down so much. It became really easy for the committee on this one, and I think they got it perfect for the top four. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, then Ohio State at four is perfect in my eyes. I don't think you could have put it any other way. I mean, maybe you swap TCU and Ohio State, but like you said, that just creates a rematch that we just saw a few weeks ago. So I like, yeah. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State in the championship, that would be so much fun, and we'll have a whole nother episode dedicated to that for the college football playoff. But yeah, this top four is pretty set in stone.
Now, this is my next problem with these rankings. You look at number 5 Alabama, number 6 Tennessee. Why is Tennessee behind Alabama? And I think a lot of people are asking that question. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have a logical answer for you. I mean, Alabama has been playing very good football as of late. But rivalry games are tough. I'll give you that. But they played in Tuscaloosa. They played a very bad Auburn team, and they beat up on them. That's what they're supposed to do. You look at that record on the right. They're both 10-2. Both of them did not qualify for the SEC championship game. So they have the same record. The only difference is Tennessee beat Alabama earlier on in the year. I think you have to put Tennessee ahead of Alabama because the head-to-head win is standing right in front of you. How is Alabama still ahead of Tennessee? I don't have the answer for you. I believe Tennessee should be number 5 in this ranking. I get Hendon Hooker did go down with an injury, but they deserve the respect for beating Alabama, and they should be 5, and Alabama should be 6.
Yeah, Freeman, I think it's really, really close between the two. I'll be honest. I mean, they're both 10-2. I think, personally, Alabama is the better team. Also, I think the College Football Playoff Committee took into account Hendon Hooker's injury, which I think does play a big part, just because they're not the same team they are without him than with him. So I think that's why they went Alabama 5, Tennessee 6. I honestly agree with them in that facet. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at the record and who they played, who they beat, Tennessee beat Alabama, and they have the same record. So I feel like just record-wise, Tennessee is above them. But once again, I think the top 6 at least, they got it right with putting Alabama over them just because they are the better team now without Hendon Hooker. 7 and 8. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to chime in. I think regardless of where you think where you think Ohio State and TCU should be, if they should be flip-flopped, and if you think Alabama and Tennessee should be flip-flopped, I think to this point, anybody can agree the top 6 is correct. Not necessarily, you can differ in the order, but yeah, these are the 6 best teams in the country, and they put them in the top 6. Are we all in agreement there?
I think we definitely are.
All right, absolutely.
Yeah, after Ben finishes up at 7 and 8, I just have a real quick question for you guys. So Ben, I'll let you finish up first.
Yeah, I'll go to the 7 and 8. I think Clemson is solid. Maybe they could be the 8 below a team that I'll get to. It's going to be very heated when we get there. But no, Clemson in the top 8 makes a lot of sense. They definitely deserve to be there. Utah is a little bit interesting for me. I know 2 wins against USC. That's massive. That what they did is incredible. But I don't know. It's a loss to Florida at the beginning of the season, who isn't even ranked at the moment. It's a loss to UCLA, who's a top 20 team now. So they just had some weird losses. It's a loss to Oregon. Those are solid teams, but I don't know. I don't like USC, or not USC. I don't like Utah in the top 8. Freeman, I don't know if you feel the same way. They're definitely top 10, but 8 is just a little too high for me.
So I would say, really quick, I would just say that I think the reason the committee did this is because they have Pac-12 champion next to their name, and I understand weighing the conference championship, but this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because if we're talking about best teams right now, then I think honestly Clemson, should be higher than Tennessee because they have Cade Klubnik. They seem to have figured it out with the quarterback position, and then obviously Hendon Hooker is injured, so it's hard to balance, the entire body of work for their season and how are they playing lately, because Utah lost to Florida early on in the year. This was a very tough game in the swamp. I mean, Florida was coming out hot, and this is the first game of the year. It's a very different Utah team from then to now, so it's very hard to pick and choose. So it's a very tough job for the committee, but I think Utah is a little bit too high, but I'm not necessarily too mad with them being 8 because they have that Pac-12 championship next to their name.
Yeah, so here's my question for you guys. I get the Utah 2 wins over USC, but do those 2 losses for USC propel them out of the top 8? And do you guys think that they should be slid in over one of these teams into the top 8? Or do you think that where they are ranked now is fair?
I don't think so.
I don't see how you can, everybody says, and it's 100% true, it's very difficult to beat a team twice. So props to Utah for beating a very good USC team twice. But I think that also is an extra knock on USC because they both times were not able to get it done. And quite frankly, I mean, this Pac-12 championship, Utah was just a more physical team. They were a better football team on both aspects of the ball. I mean, there's no way you could cut it. Utah was a better team than USC. So I think Utah around 8, 9, 10, around there is fair.
Yeah.
But wherever Utah is, USC has to be a little bit behind them after Utah beat them twice by a pretty good margin.
Definitely. I think we're going to move on to the next 4 we got here. There's our next little bunch. Ben, you want to kick us off?
Freeman, I'll throw it to you first before I go into a fit of rage. So
yeah, so I think I know what you're going to hit. I'm just going to talk about it briefly. I think that USC, they had some good wins this year, but then again, losing the way that they did against a Utah team that wasn't very proven, as we said before, 3 losses. And the really only reason that they're in that top 10 is because of that Pac-12 championship. Kansas State, I think a lot of people love the story. If you tuned into that game, that Big 12 championship game, the heart that Max Duggan showed at the end of that game the heart that Max Duggan showed for TCU at the end of that game to even put them in a position to win it. But then Deuce Vaughn for Kansas State. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that might be one of the best running backs in college football if he has a line that Blake Corum is running behind it, for example. Kansas State, I mean, again, you look at the 3 losses. I would look at Penn State at 11, and I'm thinking they're definitely too far down. And Ben, I'm sure you're going to touch on it, but Penn State has 2 losses. 1 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and 1 at home against Ohio State. And yes, Ohio State did beat them by double digits, but the game was a whole lot closer than the final score portrayed. So just Penn State at 11 and their 2 losses are to 2 playoff teams. I don't get it.
It's terrible. So I'll dance around it before I hit it. Kansas State at 9, I think is pretty perfect. I think they're definitely a top 10 team. I do love them at 9. I think that's some very, very impressive wins. I can't wait for their Sugar Bowl game against Alabama too. That should be really fun. USC at 10. That's fine with me. They're a top 10 team. Maybe you could put them at 11. I would put them at 10. I think that's a good spot for them. And then Washington at 12. That's another great spot for Washington. I think 9, 10, and 12 are all where they should be. It's just that one team in Happy Valley that is currently slotted in at 11 when they were previously 8. They didn't play a game, and somehow they moved down 3 spots. That is where I get a little bit twisted up. This Penn State team, Freeman, I mean, you put it on the dot perfectly. They went into Ann Arbor. They got manhandled. I will not debate that at all. I mean, they did. It was against the second best team in the nation, I'll mind you. The Big Ten East we're in. It was the second best team in the nation. Michigan beat us at home, and it was a big win. Then Ohio State, we host Ohio State. Yes, like you said, double digits. It was a close game. It's not a 20-point win or whatever it was. It was a close game down to the wire, and they pulled away in the last few minutes. So that is a battle from Penn State. And other than that, we beat every other opponent by an average of 25 points in the Big Ten East. And we're playing in the Rose Bowl. And we're the number 11 team in the college football playoff. It is just blasphemy to me. I think we're a top 8 team. I would put us 8 or 7 if I'm being honest. I think this ranking is terrible. I cannot believe the Nittany Lions are outside of the top 10, let alone the top 8.
See, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, I think that Penn State, I touched on it earlier. I'm not really sure how USC stacks up after the, second loss to Utah. And then their schedule throughout this entire year wasn't very strong to begin with. So yeah. I think Penn State has to be ahead of USC. Kansas State, again, 3 losses. All of their losses are to worse teams than Ohio State and Michigan, who are the 2 teams Penn State has lost to. Yep. Kansas State does have that Big 12 championship, and I think that's what's kind of hurting Penn State here, with Kansas State with the Big 12 championship and Utah with the Pac-12 championship. But I mean, I think my biggest beef is that they're behind USC. Utah and Kansas State, the only argument you could possibly make is they have that conference championship. But if we're looking at who's a better team, I think that Penn State, they play in a tougher conference. They play in a division with 2 top 4 teams. It's very difficult for them to make a conference championship game. Utah, Kansas State, they both did it as they were 9-3 going into the conference championship game. Penn State finishes their year 10-2, losses to 2 of the best teams in the country, and obviously they're not sniffing the Big Ten championship. It's just you got to weigh the conferences, and I believe that there's a little bit of SEC bias here. I think that Tennessee and Alabama being 5 and 6, that's a lot due to how everybody portrays the SEC in that college football playoff committee. But I just don't think that the Big Ten gets enough respect from the committee, and I think that's why Penn State's at 11. I do not like it.
And especially the Big Ten East. I mean, we made a whole argument about what was the best division in college football. We still said the SEC West, I'm pretty sure. But like the Big Ten East deserves so much love. It is such a difficult conference. And I mean, USC might be joining it. And I think next year is going to be. But yeah, the USC, I'm with you. This is the one I'm most pissed off against. They lost to Utah twice. We lost to Michigan in Michigan and Ohio State. Are Michigan and Ohio State better than Utah?
Absolutely.
That's the answer. What else do you need to do? I mean, they made it to the Pac-12 championship. They didn't win it, so you don't weigh that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Kansas State, I think we're better than Kansas State. 3 losses, all of them are way worse than Ohio State and Michigan, like you said. And then Utah, I cannot wait for the Rose Bowl now for Penn State to prove why they should be above Utah in these rankings, but I don't want to go on forever. So Jock, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up here for this segment, and I think our last segment is going to be a pretty quick one. We got our final Heisman predictions here. I think we're going to see a lot of similarities here, but Ben, I'll throw it to you first.
And I'll pass it over to Friedman.
I
got a little package for you guys.
All right, so I'll get us started. I believe that this is the biggest embarrassment of a Heisman finalist cast I've ever seen.
I agree. It's awful.
Stetson Bennett being thrown in there is just ridiculous. He is not even close. I think it's pretty obvious that he wasn't even a top 10 player because the award, as we've touched on before, goes to the most outstanding player in college football. Without a doubt, he does not fall in the top 10 most outstanding players in college football this year. I mean, I could easily argue that his teammate Brock Bowers is most definitely more deserving of this award than Stetson Bennett is. I mean, you look at Blake Corum; he's deserving of a spot in New York for the finale. Hendon Hooker, like I could go on and on here.
I think,
that's ridiculous. I mean, one could even argue that if we're talking the best player at their position, the stats may not have showed it, but Marvin Harrison Jr.
I was
an
just about to
absolute
get there.
Beast this year.
I think he should have been close.
It's a total quarterback award at this point. Max Duggan showed some incredible heart in that Big 12 championship game. But, are we serious? He's a Heisman finalist as well. As I said, earlier in other episodes, in previous episodes, Caleb Williams is my winner, in my opinion. I think it's the least deserved Heisman maybe I've ever seen. I mean, he does deserve it, but, you look at recent years, Dwayne Haskins, for example. I mean, he finished second. Joe Burrow finished first. Dwayne Haskins wins Heisman any other year with the numbers that he put up. I think it's a very weak Heisman cast right now. I mean, I think Stroud and Caleb Williams are both rightfully finalists, but I would throw Blake Corum and Hendon Hooker in there. Absolutely. Hendon Hooker's injury hurt him a little bit in his Heisman campaign, and Blake Corum's injury hurt him a little bit in his Heisman campaign, but they both definitely deserve spots in New York for the Heisman finalists.
Yeah, Matt said it perfectly for me. I think that it really is just an all-quarterback award, and I don't like it. I mean, I completely agree Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett should not be there. In my opinion, they should not. But, I mean, again, I would love to give it to CJ, but you can't. You have to give it to Caleb Williams at this point. I mean, it's just really obvious at this point. Ben, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, so, I mean, like Freeman said, the cast for Heisman is awful this year. It is terrible. Freeman also went in depth on a guy who isn't even a finalist, and that's why my pick is Blake Corum for who is most deserving of the Heisman. Obviously, I know he has no possibility of winning it, because he's not even going to New York. So this pick obviously might make no sense to some people, but this is who I think deserves the Heisman the most. In the NFL, the MVP stands for most valuable player, which is stupid in my opinion, but it always has to go to a quarterback because that's who has the most value. College, it is the most outstanding player in terms of Heisman. And even if it wasn't, if it was most valuable player, I would still make that argument for Blake Corum. I think Blake Corum's value to Michigan is so close to guys like Caleb Williams, to guys like Max Duggan. I think that is how good Corum has been this year. And this is the perfect year for Corum to win it. No one deserves it out of the quarterbacks this year. No one. So why not Blake Corum?
I mean,
Matt, Jock, you go first. Jock, you go first.
My only argument, I mean, I don't hate it at all. I mean, I like it a lot. The only argument I could say is that for positional value and how much he adds to Michigan, I feel like in the past couple of weeks, he's really seen J.J. McCarthy step up his game and improve his level of play. So it's the only reason why I would say I could debate against it. But other than that, I would say, yes, Blake Corum is obviously the most valuable player on that team. But to say positional-wise, he's the most valuable player of all these quarterbacks, I wouldn't think so, because I think the fact that J.J. McCarthy has stepped up so much for this Michigan team, that's the only argument I think I could make against the fact that Blake Corum would be an MVP.
This is where my issue is. I mean, you look at Donovan Edwards, and he didn't have the workload that Blake Corum had, obviously, but I mean, this guy ran 7.2 yards per carry in the absence of Blake Corum, and just when they mixed him in even while Blake Corum was healthy. So Blake Corum was absolutely phenomenal this year. Do not get me wrong. Like I said, he should be a Heisman finalist, but I think it hurts him when the production of his backup is very similar to the production that he had throughout this year. It hurts him because it shows that the offensive line is very dominant. And, who knows? Maybe Donovan Edwards could put up as good or better numbers than Blake Corum this year. He has better averages. Obviously, it's on less attempts, but I think that the emergence of Donovan Edwards in the absence of Blake Corum and the emergence of J.J. McCarthy and his ability to make those downfield to, win the biggest game of the year against Ohio State in Columbus, I think that takes the effect of Blake Corum carrying his team. It takes that off of him a little bit, and I just don't see how Blake Corum deserves to win the Heisman Trophy. Mentioned for sure, but if we're talking the most, I guess it's Caleb Williams. It's a quarterback award, so they're going to give it to him. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. If we're talking best player in college football, you can absolutely go Marvin Harrison. Blake Corum, you can make an argument, but you're right. I don't think any of these quarterbacks are deserving of it this year, yet I believe the final, the all four finalists are quarterbacks, and it will go Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett, and I could tell you two of them definitely should not even be close to being mentioned.
I agree. Ben, I'll throw it over to you one last time and think we'll move it on after that.
Yeah, I believe as we're filming this, the college football positional awards are going on. Stetson Bennett won the best walk-on award, which good for him. But that is the only award he should be receiving this year. I'm sorry, he gets carried. This is such an easy team to win with. I'm not gonna make the joke hey, throw me out on Georgia and I'll win the national championship too. I won't say that, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. Stetson Bennett is not a championship winning quarterback. He's just not. He's a game manager with the best defense in college football, incredible weapons. The surrounding cast in Georgia is so good. He does not deserve to be here. I don't think Duggan deserves to be here as well. Stroud, I think, does deserve to be here. Williams for sure deserves to be here. Corum deserves to be here. I mean, I know the value take I made is shoddy. I know it's very shocking. I struggle with it before the show too. But once again, I'll go back to what the Heisman stands for. Most outstanding player in college football. Doesn't even take value into account. So that's why I think, especially this year with how it's gone, you can't give it to a quarterback. And if you're not going to give it to a quarterback, the guy you have to give it to is Blake Corum.
Yeah, really quick, just before we move on, I just really want to reiterate how disappointing and embarrassing it is that Stetson Bennett is a Heisman finalist this year. I mean, if you're looking at numbers, he just does not stack up with the rest of these quarterback candidates, with the rest of these running back candidates. If you look at Blake Corum, it's really unbelievable. also, if you look at the degree of difficulty, I mean, we talk about how, how unbelievable Ohio State's weapons are with Emeka Egbuka and with Marvin Harrison, and that can hurt C.J. Stroud a little bit. But you're looking at maybe the best tight end duo in college football history right now with Stetson Bennett. You got Brock Bowers, you got Darnell Washington. These guys are absolute monsters. The throws are not a tremendous degree of difficulty in this Kirby Smart offense. It's just embarrassing that he is even a finalist right now. I absolutely hate it.
Yeah, and I think if we got no more comments from Ben and Matt, I think that's going to wrap up the college football part of the show, and we're going to do our nice little intro into the college basketball part of the show.
And just like that, we are back. Same trio, same level, different sport. College basketball, a lot has happened, guys. I mean, college football, we're waiting on a few things to go down. So in the coming weeks, definitely expect a lot of football in your YouTube feed. But right now, guys, college basketball is so fun. I want to hit some All-American teams that we're going to be throwing out there, our opinions on who should make the first team. Each of our top 5 teams, and then some massive games we have in this upcoming week. So let's start it off with those All-American teams. Jock, I'll throw it to you first. Who do you have making your college basketball All-American first team?
Oh man, would I love to kick this off. I've been looking forward to this for a little bit. I think that if you look at where we were in the preseason with the All-American rankings and to now, I think it's a lot different than people expected. I think that there's a couple of guys that are still there, but I think there's a lot of changes. So I'm going to start with my guards, move to my forwards, and then my forward center. So the first guy I have in my All-American rankings for guards is Terrence Shannon Jr. I believe he is the best shooter in the country. He's leading an Illinois team that has proven to be very good. I love this guy. I saw him cook my UCLA Bruins earlier in the season at the Maui Invitational. Shot 9 for 10 from 3. I was like, this guy is really something special. This guy balls every night. So I think he's the most deserving out of the guards. And the other guy I have with him in the guard position is Marcus Sasser. I mean, the numbers I feel like have regressed a little bit from what we thought in the preseason. But again, he's leading the best team in the country in Houston. I mean, I don't see a world where you can't put him at one of the 2 guard spots for All-American as of right now. Maybe if we get later in the season and Houston was back a little bit, maybe you can take him out. For my forwards, I'm going to start with Willie K's favorite boy at Indiana. Give me Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, this guy has been unbelievable so far for Indiana. He has I think he's carried this team. I think this Indiana team itself is not that great. I know Will's going to take a little bit of offense to that, but I think Trace Jackson Davis is really the only thing going for this team. I think he is such a great player overall. I think he's really just the heart and soul of that team. At my other forward spot, there's a couple guys. I think I'm still going to give it to Timmy, even after the regression of the Gonzaga Bulldogs so far. I like what Timmy's doing. I think that positional value-wise, he is so valued at Gonzaga, even more now after the departure of guys like Nembhard and Holmgren. I think that, and the numbers reflect it so far, so I'm going to give it to Timmy. I think there's a couple other guys. If you were to change one out of my guys, I think Drew Timmy would be the guy you could switch out. And at center, it's undebatably Zach Edey, the best player in college basketball right now, having a monster season. There's no argument. That's the one. I would say him and Terrence Shannon are the 2 guys you cannot argue out of my All-Americans. Those 2 guys have been the top 2 college basketball players in the country, in my opinion, so far. And Edey has been a monster. He's leading that Purdue team. They're currently number 3 ranked team in the country, and that's for a reason, because of that guy.
All right, so I'm gonna throw Jock's team up on the screen there. So let us know your thoughts on if you would sub anyone in or out for Jock's team. But yeah, Jock, I don't see anything wrong with this team. It's kind of hard to debate it.
Yeah, the only thing I think you could debate is taking Timmy out of the forward spot is the only thing I think I could see. But other than that, I think that those 4 of Shannon, Sasser, Jackson, and Edey have to all be there, in my opinion.
I definitely like it, but I disagree with saying that Timmy's the only one you can take out of there. So I'll read off mine. And then,
I'll send my comments for last. Go ahead. I'll let you read it all out.
And then we'll debate at the end. So
yeah,
my All-American team right now for college basketball, or I'm going to take Jordan Walker at a UAB with my first point guard spot. I understand he plays in a way lower market team, UAB. I get it. He's shooting 45% from the field. That's unbelievable. 25.7 points per game. That's leading all of college basketball. I mean, efficient scorer, leading scorer in all of college basketball. He's the only bright spot that UAB has, and they look like they could be a potential tournament team, if they got hot at the right time. But that's just, I think he has to slide in there. Number 2, I will agree with you, Terrence Shannon. He has to be put in there. He is the best shooter in college basketball, in my opinion. I mean, 20 a game. He's got 6 rebounds as a guard. That's very impressive, and then the 3 assists to go with it. That's very solid. So I agree. I don't think there's any debate there. Terrence Shannon should be in there. Trace Jackson Davis, I'll agree with you there again. He is the heart and soul of this Indiana team. Not only is he, does he show up on the stat sheet, first triple-double in a long time for Indiana's basketball program this past week against Nebraska, I believe. He, the numbers are there. He can pass the ball, rebound, scores the ball very efficiently. And I agree with you. I don't think there's any debate there for Trace Jackson Davis. This is where we differ. Again, I'm going to put Jalen Wilson of the Kansas Jayhawks. I'm going to put him ahead of Drew Timme. He's scoring the ball again at a very high rate, 22 a game. He's giving you 9 rebounds and 3 assists as well. I mean, Kansas has had the success to back up. And I mean, Jalen Wilson has been the biggest part of that. This is a very well-coached team, but I just don't like how Drew Timme has been playing as of late. So I'm going to have to go with Jalen Wilson. Now, lastly, I'm going to have to go with Zach Edey as my center, as the All-American. There's no debate whatsoever there. And there's no debate. He's the best player in college basketball without a doubt. So Zach Edey's my center, and that'll round out my All-American team.
All right, Jock, any thoughts?
I mean, I don't hate it. I think Jordan Walker is very deserving for playing for UAB. I just think that the fact is it's going to come down to the numbers are definitely there for Jordan Walker. He's had better numbers than Marcus Sasser so far. I just think that the fact that Sasser is leading the best team in the country is so far, I think that I give Sasser a little bit of an edge because, again, he's the leader of the best team in the country. But Jordan Walker is very deserving, and I don't hate Jordan Walker being put in there. Jalen Wilson, I don't know. It disgruntles me a little bit.
That's the word of the week from Jock. Wow.
Disgruntles me. And my mind's also, sorry guys for interrupting, but a little bit in the loop. My New York Mets in baseball just signed Brandon Nimmo and David Robertson in the past 15 minutes. So I'm a little excited right now. But back to college basketball here. Jalen Wilson has been balling. I don't hate it, but I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I'm going to leave it at there. I'm not going to argue it. I don't hate it at all, but I think Timme deserves it because he's so valued for this Gonzaga team, but I'm not going to argue with that.
I'll just reiterate, my reasonings really quick. I just think the regression that Gonzaga has had, and I expected it, losing Nembhard and losing Holmgren, those are 2 huge pieces. But Timmy's doing a fantastic job. He's definitely going to get an All-American mention, whether it's first, second, or third team. But I would just have Jalen Wilson ahead. The numbers are better. The team success is better. I get that the Gonzaga Bulldogs rely more on Timme than the Kansas Jayhawks do on Jalen Wilson, but the numbers and team success speak volumes for me, so that's why I'll take them. Or I'll take Jalen Wilson.
Understandable. I don't hate it at all.
All right, so I'll throw both teams up there just so anyone watching at home wants to compare them. So this is Giacomo's team, and then right here we got Freeman's team. So go debate at home. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on both of these teams. And with that, I think it's time to move over to each of our top 5 teams in college basketball. So, Jock, I'll throw it to you first again.
Yeah, I'd love it. So I think when was the last day, people? I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it should be Monday.
3 days ago. I think that AP poll is still the top 5 teams in the country, just in a different order. So, what's up, Matt?
I was gonna heavily I thought you were gonna say something crazy, but I'm with you.
No, so the top 5 teams in the country, number 1 I still believe is the Houston Cougars. I think that they're still the best team in the country. Even their cupcake wins, they're still blowout wins. That's why I think that they're just going to keep going. Number 2 in the country, I have Purdue moving up. I think Zach Edey is the best player in the country. I think that their strength of their wins as of late have been better than Virginia, which is why I moved Virginia down to number 3. The 5-point wins to James Madison and I forget, it was another cupcake team, but 5-point wins to Jay Madison and that other team don't impress me that much, both at home. So I would slide down Virginia to 3. At number 4, give me UConn. A couple of big wins in the last week. I like where they're going. I like the momentum they have. And at number 5, even with the loss to Illinois, give me the Texas Longhorns.
So, Jack, do you want to run through all those teams again, just real quick, so everyone got them?
Yeah, number 1, Houston. Number 2, Purdue. Number 3, Virginia. Number 4, UConn. Number 5, Texas.
All right, Freeman, any thoughts?
I absolutely love it, and you'll understand why I absolutely love it as I touch on it in about 1 second. So, I really do think it's a fantastic list as of now. I mean, I agree with it for the most part. I would just make a couple little tweaks, but just to read off my list at number 1 for my top 5 teams in college basketball right now. For number 1, again, give me the Houston Cougars. You know, the most depth, most experience. They've taken care of business. You know, every single game, undefeated. There's nothing more you could ask of this Houston team. So they stay at number 1. Number 2, I'm going to agree with you here and say Purdue, the Boilermakers, are the number 2 team in the country. Again, they've been taking care of business, and they have the best player in the entire nation. Zach Edey has been unbelievable. So I think they got to be seen as number 2 team in the country. Number 4, I'll throw Virginia in there. I've been a fan of them all year. I like their wins. They're undefeated. Again, they've been shaky as of late, but again, no losses. They have quality wins, so they have to be there at number 3. Number 4 is UConn. I'm not entirely sold on this team yet. I don't see the star power on this team. I just don't think that their talent on their roster will stack up to, you know, the rest of the teams in my top 5. But as of right now, undefeated, they got to be at number 4. And I'm going to take Texas out of the top 5. I have them at number 6. Give me the Kansas Jayhawks and at number 5. I just think the talent that they have, they could be the best coach team in the entire country. They have a lot of experience. They also have a lot of inexperience that is starting to get their footing a little bit. So that's my top 5.
Ben, can I evaluate real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Love it. I love top 3. I could not agree with you more. Number 4 with UConn. I think Matt said it perfectly. I'm not sold on this UConn team at all, but as of late, their strength of wins and how they've been winning is really improving. They just blew out my Florida Gators on the road. It's a very big win for them. I just think that as of right now, UConn has to be the number 4 team in the country. Number 5, Kansas. I think Kansas is 6 or 7. For me, they are. I think that the Texas loss to Illinois is a big loss. But if they were at number 2, I would bring them down 3 spots. I still think that they're a top 5 team in the country. I think that they just got cooked by Terrence Shannon Jr., who's one of my favorite players in the country. Marcus Mayer, throw some shade at him. Also, he had a very big game as well. I just think that loss doesn't take Texas out of the top 5 for me. I would have Texas at 5, and then I think I would say Kansas at 6. But I don't hate it at all. I really love it.
See, I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I mean, I have Kansas ahead, obviously, but I think they're pretty much interchangeable. I agree. I have Texas at 6 and then Kansas at 5, obviously. Again, UConn, if I'm talking about who I think are the best teams in the country, this is where it gets tough because you have to look at resume. You have to look at the teams that are undefeated that are left. UConn is one of them. So in my eyes, an undefeated team should be ahead of a one-loss team regardless of who they played. So give me UConn over Kansas as of now. But I think that if these 2 teams faced off, UConn and Kansas, I really do think Kansas would beat them pretty handily.
I would agree.
I mean, right now, it's more of I kind of have to put them there because they're undefeated. I think they're the worst undefeated of the 4 that are in my top 5. Yep. But I think I'm just kind of waiting around for them to get that first big test and then finally slip. and drop out of the top 5.
And real quick, I think Matt said it perfectly. I think if UConn played, I'm just looking at like the 8 through 10 teams, my Arkansas Razorbacks, Creighton, Arizona. I think if they played any of those teams, I feel like they would get blown out. I mean, I think that those are 3 legit opponents that where if you put them against UConn, I think UConn would really have some tough troubles against. I think those are 3 top-notch defenses in Creighton, Arkansas, and Arizona. So I think Matt said it perfectly. I'll leave it off there.
Yeah, I don't know about blowing out. I think, and I'll get to my top 5. I think UConn deserves a little bit more love than getting blown out by Arkansas and Creighton. If we're being honest, I think they are deserving of being top 5. They might not be a top 5 team in college basketball, but I mean, I think they still put up a fight against teams like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the UConn for years, I mean, they've been built around their powerful big men. I mean, it's been a pipeline for big men to the NBA, for All-American teams. And that's how this team is built right here. I just don't – that doesn't seem to play. I think it's very classic Big East basketball. I think this is as of now, I was very high on Creighton early on in the year. As of now, this is obviously your front runner in the Big East. But as they start to play, and they had a very weak non-conference schedule, to be completely honest with you, UConn did. So as we start to see the tougher games in the Big East, as we start to, see this is a long way away, but once we get into March and once we start to see UConn face off against some of these teams in other conferences, I think they will get exposed because they just don't have the guards to hang with.
Oh. That's a blackout. Ben, you want to give us your top 5 while we wait on that?
I think it's a perfect chance for Freed. You got to finish your sentence, or you're all good there, Freed?
Matt?
I think he's muted.
Oh,
we're off again. All right, I'm just going to move on to my
top
Ben. 5 then. A little bit different from you guys. I think you'll still appreciate it, but there's some similarities. But I got a team that you guys actually haven't even mentioned yet. Number 1, Houston. Obviously, they have to be. That defense is unreal on Houston. The offense is looking great. Number 2, I also have Purdue. Zach Edey is looking incredible. Big win against Duke. I know that was before this week, but big win against Duke. A couple commanding victories against Purdue and Minnesota are definitely looking good for the Boilermakers. So I got them slotting in at number 2. And number 3 is a tough one. Number 3, I'm going to put UConn. I was arguing for them before, so I got to put them at number 3. They're undefeated, so give me the Huskies at number 3. I think it's only fair before I put these 1-loss, 2-loss teams in there. So Huskies are going to slot in at number 3. And here is when I mention a team that hasn't even been mentioned yet, and they're slotting in at number 4 for me. Give me the Tennessee Volunteers at number 4. Give me Tennessee at number 4. Some of the wins on their resume look incredible. It was a great victory against USC, pretty commanding. A 14-point win versus your top 5 team, Kansas, which I mean, you're the one making the picks here. But they lost to Colorado, which was bad, and that's it. They were blowing out all the teams they were supposed to blow out. They beat Kansas. They beat USC. They blew out Butler. So this Tennessee team is legit so far this season. They're slotting it at number 4, and then I'm still going to have Texas at number 5. I know it was a heartbreaking loss to Illinois the other day, but Texas number 5. They still beat Creighton. They still have some great wins under their belt. Obviously, that Gonzaga game. But yeah, I know I'm not including a couple teams that you guys included.
Yeah.
I think those 2 orange teams have to go in at 4 or 5. Give me Tennessee and give me Texas.
So I'll hop in here first, and I think this is going to show how non-biased I am to teams I like and teams I don't. The fact that, for me, I don't hate UConn at 3. I don't think that they're the number 3 team in the country as of right now. But the fact that Virginia isn't in the top 5 is a little disconcerting for me. I think that at least you have to move Virginia at 5 and take out Texas, a team that I love so much. But the strength of wins for Virginia are there, more than Tennessee. I get Tennessee's strength of wins are massive, but Virginia has some of the best wins in the country so far, and they've looked
undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see a world where you take Virginia out of the top 5 as of now. Yeah. Putting Tennessee, I think, for me, I think you got to put Virginia in there. But to slide Tennessee in there, I don't hate it, but I think that Virginia not being there, and Kansas, I think that they're both better teams than Tennessee so far. To say that Tennessee is a mention of the top 5, I don't hate, but to say that they're a top 5 team right now, let alone number 4, I can't get behind that.
And for me, it's definitely Virginia 6 and Kansas 7. And hey, the next game Virginia plays, we got a little while, December 17th. They play Houston, so they can go from 6 to honestly like 1. I mean, if we're being honest, so Virginia has a very good opportunity to slide straight up. But yeah, I just love Tennessee and Texas so much this year. I think the wins that they have are looking incredible. They're winning by such wide margins, which I think is super impressive. So that's why I have those two teams in my top 5.
Hey, I don't necessarily agree, but for me, I would just wait. Virginia has the wins. They haven't looked fantastic as of late, but they're undefeated. They have the quality wins. That's why I think they're a must-have in your top 5. But I can at least see some of the reasoning that you're providing, so I can get to that point.
Yeah, I would say if in a hypothetical case, if Virginia lost that game to James Madison, they only won by 5 at home. I think then yes, I would get behind this top 5. I would 100% agree with you. But they won that game; they're undefeated, so I would slide Virginia in the top 5.
And hey, I get that, but it's just for me, it's how close some of the games have been for Virginia. Like they're just barely beating Florida State. They're just barely beating Michigan. They're just barely beating James Madison, like you guys mentioned, just barely beating Baylor. They're good wins, but they're not by enough for me to slot them in a top 5.
And that's why in earlier episodes, I've called them out. I think that they're a little bit of a fraudulent team and think that they're a very good team. I don't think they're top 5. I think they're a borderline top 10 team, but I think they're ranked too high by the end of the season. But as of right now, you can't argue against it. I would love to argue against it, but I can't. So
I mean, you got that marquee matchup against Houston coming up in about a couple weeks. So
and I think Houston will
settle it.
Houston,
and I don't think it's necessarily. I do believe Houston will win that game, but I think it's more if this is a single-digit loss for Virginia, I think it almost solidifies them as a top 5 team. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean,
I think Houston is so by far number 1 right now.
Unanimous number 1. So
so I think a close loss would honestly move them up in my books.
Okay, then that's fair.
We'll see. I got to watch the game first. I got to see how this Virginia team plays against the best team in the country, and then I can tell you what I think.
That's fair.
All right, I think that's good then for our top 5 teams. So we'll finish off the episode with the segment we always finish off with, our top 3 games of the week. However, it's a little bit different. There's too many good games coming up in the next 7 days. The top 3 plus 1 games of the week. We'll start it off with number 19 USA. USA. Hey, just filmed the World Cup show. Just filmed the World Cup show was a heartbreaking loss. So UCLA number 19 in college basketball at number 13 Maryland. Jock, what do you have in this one?
I mean, again, I'm trying not to be biased here. UCLA's looked rough. I mean, Jamie Hawkes is really the only thing. He's up there for All-Americans, by the way. Should have been an honorable mention, in my opinion, for the forwards. He's been balling out this year. But the fact is that this team has not looked good, and I do not like anything I've seen out of Nick Cronin's team so far. I think they'll turn it up by the end of the season, but I think this is going to be another close ranked loss for UCLA. So give me the Maryland Terrapins at home in College Park. I think that the atmosphere over there is going to be too much for UCLA going in. So give me the Terps.
Freed?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with the pick. It's College Park is going to be rocking. As we said before, I mean, the game against Illinois, you were very high on the Fighting Illini over there, and then they went into College Park and got dismantled a little bit by this Maryland team. So I think, once again, games in Big Ten environments, especially at home, very hard to win. I think Maryland's a better team than UCLA, and I think the atmosphere is just going to be too much for UCLA to handle. So, you know what? Give me Maryland by 10 plus. I think they're going to be able to handle UCLA pretty easily right now.
And Jock, I cannot believe you're leaving me alone on this. I know it's kind of an unconventional pick.
Wow.
Give me the Bruins. I'm taking the Bruins in College Park in this one. I think that their offense is just going to be too much for Maryland to handle. And I know it doesn't make too much sense. Maryland looks like the better team. They might be the better team, but for me, I just don't see UCLA taking another loss to another ranked team. They didn't beat They didn't beat Baylor. They didn't beat Illinois. So I think this is their first ranked win of the season. That's honestly my only reason. I could not hit you with any facts for this.
Ben, I could get behind it, but the fact that you're saying that the offense is too much for Maryland, what offense? Amari Bailey has looked atrocious right now. He is playing way under expectations for being one of the top freshmen in the country. I mean, if anything, they would need the defense to step up and lock down Maryland. Hawkes is really the only scorer. Campbell's been atrocious. Amari Bailey's been atrocious. Singleton's been shooting the lights out, but that's all he does. All he does is shoot. But I mean, this team, they've looked rough. They've just looked rough, and that's the best way I could put it.
And hey, maybe go ahead, Freed.
Yeah, I'm just going to defend Ben real quick. I mean, it's pretty evident that UCLA has the talent to be a top 10 team in the country.
But they're just struggling.
Like you said, say again.
They're just struggling. There's guys struggling.
And I absolutely agree. That's why I'm hopping on Maryland. But I don't think taking UCLA is too crazy.
No, it's not at all.
Team, they have experience at key positions on their roster. They have tons of talent. Easily, if you're looking at roster, it's a top 10 roster if you're just looking at strictly talent. So it's not crazy to say that UCLA will get hot and break out of their slump and beat Maryland. I disagree, but I can definitely see where Ben's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jock, you mentioned that some of the superstars aren't playing like expected for the offense, but the offense is still showing up. I mean, 75 points against Baylor, 70 points against Illinois, and 80 bomb on Stanford. And I think this Maryland defense is not as good as some people might chalk it out to be. So, hey, it's going to be a close one in my eyes. Obviously, it's still at Maryland, but yeah, I got UCLA in this one. It should be a really fun game. I believe it's in the next few days. Yeah, December 14th, so it'll be Wednesday. That's going to be an awesome game to watch. Next game we got is Arizona versus Indiana in Nevada. Jock.
One name, Trish Jackson Davis. I think that this Arizona team this year is not as good as last year. I think they're a little bit fraudulent in a weak Pac-12 division, which I mentioned before. I think Trish Jackson Davis is one of the best players in the country, and I think that I know that they lost to Rutgers the other day, and I think Trish Jackson Davis is going to take that a little personally against Arizona. I think he's going to have the game of his life in a neutral site game in Nevada. I think this is a big statement game for Indiana. I think if Indiana wins this game, they're a top 10 team in the country. So I'm going to take Indiana here. Give me the Hoosiers.
Freed?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go the opposite as you, Jock. I'll take Arizona here. And for several reasons. The game's being played in Nevada, obviously. If you're looking at how far Arizona is from Nevada, it's closer. You'd have to assume Arizona will be able to pack the arena. But that's not the main reason for this pick. I'm looking at Arizona. They like to get out and run. They score as much as anyone else in the country. And Arizona's a very physical team. Trace Jackson Davis, I picked him to be an All-American this year. He is a fantastic player, but his bread and butter throughout this year is kind of taking smaller defenders in the post and working through that. I just don't know how that matchup is going to fare against a very physical and big Arizona team. I just think Trace Jackson Davis is a bit of an off game. Arizona gets out and runs, and they score a lot of points, so I'll take Arizona.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a fun matchup between an incredible Arizona offense and a great Indiana defense. So I think that could be really fun to watch. It's another one that's down the middle for me. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna agree with Freed here. I think that Arizona offense is just playing so well. I mean, dropping 87 on San Diego State, another 80 bomb on Creighton. Like they're playing incredible. I think it's going to be just a little bit too much for Indiana to handle. And plus Freeman added, it's in Nevada, essentially a home game for Arizona. It's probably like a 7-8 hour drive for any Indiana fan. Arizona, maybe 1 to 2 hours. So yeah, give me the Wildcats in this one. We'll move on to another Maryland game, this time against Tennessee, number 13 Maryland versus number 7 Tennessee in Madison Square Garden. Jock.
This is a big game. I think that this is a game where if Maryland wins, they become a top 10 team. If Tennessee loses, I think they get booted out of the top 10 just because of how big. It depends on the loss also for Tennessee. I think that Maryland is a severely underrated team as of right now. I really like the strides I have seen. I know Ben is probably going to take Tennessee here because of the advocation he had for them in the top 5.
We'll spoil it.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that this Maryland team is insanely hot. I think coming off that win that I just said, against Arizona. I think they're just going to be hot. I think that they're going to be, as Matt mentioned a couple episodes ago, the best teams in college basketball are the teams that are hot at that time. The teams that get hot beat the best teams. And for that reason, I'm going to take Maryland against Tennessee and a neutral site. It's a little bit closer also, distance-wise, Maryland to New York than Tennessee to New York. But again, not a big factor. I think Maryland's going to be hot. I think that their defense is just so good. So give me Maryland.
Freeman?
Yes, yeah, I'm going to take Maryland as well. Slightly different reasons. Jameer Young for Maryland. Maryland, I think, is a very well coached team. They're better coached than Tennessee. I think Jameer Young will be the best scorer on the court if we're looking at the entire game. Tennessee is very inexperienced. You know, they lost a lot from last year to this year. They're inexperienced at the guard position. No one has really made their name yet, and this is the type of game where a guard can make their name. But I'll take Maryland. I think they're better coached. I think they play better defense. So I just think they'll be more prepared for this big-time matchup. So give me the Terps.
I mean, Maryland's closer to Madison Square Garden, but, I mean, I don't know who's really going to travel for this game. So I'm not going to really talk about that too much. But, yeah, if Jock didn't give it away and if my top five didn't give it away, I'm taking the Volunteers in this one, guys. I think they have an argument for one of the best defenses in college basketball right now. I think they're holding teams to an average of like 48, 49 points per game after that big Colorado loss. Kansas scored 50 against them, which is insane. And you guys had them in your top five. I'm not going to go back there. I'm just saying Tennessee held them to 50 points. So I just want to throw that out there. But, yeah, obviously I'm taking Tennessee in this one.
I mean, no complaints, really. This is another one that really could go either way. I'm sure Tennessee expects to win this game. I'm sure Maryland expects to win this game. It's definitely going to be a crazy matchup, and we're lucky that we get all these marquee matchups this late into the non-conference slate, the non-conference part of the year. So we got to enjoy while it lasts because the conference matchups are coming.
And hey, that's why we had to do top 3+1. There were just too many good games that we had to hit. But yeah, that's why I'm taking Tennessee. And this one, I think they start off Maryland's, not going to call it downfall, but spiral downwards with this one. And then the Wednesday after this game, I have them losing as well to UCLA. The final game, and arguably the best game, you can make the argument with this game and this next game. Alabama, number 8, is traveling to number 1 Houston. Jock.
I see no signs of slowing down for Marcus Sasser in Houston. I think this Alabama team is very good. I think that come tournament time, they're a top 2-3 seed in the tournament. But I think as of right now, Houston is just such a dominant power, and they've showed no signs of why they should lose this game. So I'm going to take Houston, and I'll even take it a step up. I think Houston's going to win by a wide margin. I'm not going to say double digits, but like an 8-9 point win is when I'm going to take Houston if I was making a round score prediction. So give me Houston by a bigger margin than people expect.
I'm just not a very big fan of Alabama, to be completely honest with you. They play, incredible offense, but their defense is just nowhere to be found. I mean, their big wins against a very fraudulent North Carolina team to this point, a poor coach, to be honest with you, in this early stages of this year. A Michigan State team that was, they started off hot, but I think in terms of their ranking in the polls, they jumped a little higher than they should have after keeping it close with some top teams and then beating some top teams. So I'm not too confident in any of Alabama's wins. I don't think they're super quality wins. I don't think there's any on Alabama's record as of now. And Houston, I think we can all agree, far and away the best team in the country. So especially games being played in Houston, give me the Cougars. I think they'll roll over the Tide.
Yeah, and I'm going with the same with you guys. I got Houston by a decent amount on this game. And Freeman, you talked about Alabama's offense. Yes, it is very good. I want to talk a little bit about Houston's defense. I mean, they are shutting down teams. Everyone they play cannot break. What is the most points they've scored? It's 55. That's the most points scored so far. Oregon had 56. Sorry, Oregon had 56. So yeah, I'm saying Alabama scores less than 65 points against Houston, and Houston is 75 plus in this game. So I'm going double digits for the Wildcats.
Ooh, I love it.
I'm with it.
I love it.
I'm with it.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Bama is they're a bit overrated. They're still a great team, top 15 team, but I don't think they're number 8 in the country. I don't think that's where they should be ranked. But guys, I think that's it. Unless we have any other things to add.
No, I think
we're good.
That's perfect. And that'll do it for episode 5 of Joe's Knows College Sports. Giacomo Imperiale, Matt Friedman. I've been your host, Ben Chadwick, alongside Jock as my co-host. Thanks for watching.